Hello, I'm Emily Parlier, the coordinator for elementary science. Good morning, CCPS students and staff. Happy ZooCon Friday, and welcome to the Naples Zoo. Let's have fun learning and discovering interesting facts about some fantastic animals as Wags and I welcome you to Collier County Public Schools ZooCon. Good morning, and a special welcome to all the CCPS kindergartners tuning in across the district for today's ZooCon. Today is going to be an exciting day. Are you guys ready to meet an amazing animal? Yeah, me too. It's time to meet the alligator. We will hear from Naples zookeepers about how they take care of the alligators there at the Naples Zoo, and also hear from an alligator expert from the Brevard Zoo, who will explain how alligators and their habitats are protected in the Florida Everglades. Get ready to see some alligators up close and learn some fun facts about how they live. Okay, so you guys ready for an adventure with our scaly, toothy friends? With a little bit of magic here, it's time for me to join our friends at the Naples Zoo.
Wow, where did you come from?
Hello, Eve. Hi, guys. Welcome. I'm so excited to be here with you all. You can see that we're sort of behind the scenes at the Naples Zoo. I'm so excited for you all to be our first one of this school year. I'm going to Eve to talk through alligators and how they use their five senses, and then she'll introduce our zookeepers and our experts. I hope you guys learned so much today.
Thank you, Emily. Hi, my name is Eve. I'm the education specialist here at Naples Zoo. Welcome to today's Alligator ZooCon. So this month, you all read the book, Zach's Alligator. In this book, Zach's uncle sends him a pocket-sized alligator named Bridget. With a little bit of water, Bridget grew and grew. And as she grew, she used her five senses to explore the world around her. While you won't see our wild alligators eating meatloaf like Bridget, they do use their senses to explore their habitats. By looking at this alligator skull here, we can see that alligators have a lot of teeth. Their 80 sharp teeth eat fish, snakes, and more. Their teeth also are used to explore their surroundings, similar to how we use touch. The position of their nose and eyes atop their heads allows them to stay mostly hidden underwater while still being able to see and smell things around them. While alligators don't use words like you and me, they do have their own form of communication. They can be heard grumbling and bellowing at each other. So, while you won't see any American alligators riding a carousel or drinking from a water fountain like Bridget, they do explore quite a bit and use their five senses. So next we are going to meet one of our very own zookeepers, and then we will hear from a field expert. So now I'm going to pass it off to Keeper Erin.
Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing this morning? Oh, good. That's what we like to hear. Well, again, my name is Erin, and I'm lucky enough to work very closely with our reptile department here at the Naples Zoo. So our reptile department, like you have been learning, includes our American alligators. So here at the Naples Zoo, we have 10. They've made it really easy for us. We have 5 girls and we have 5 boys. Now, one of my favorite questions that I get asked every single day is, what are all their names? And I really like that question because they all have different names, just like they all have different personalities. I know you guys all have different names and you guys might have different personalities, and our alligators are the same way. So our 5 girls, we have Mama, we have Little Girl, we have Freckles, we have Scar, we have Firecracker, we have Jaws, we have Big Red, we have Little Man, we have Brutus, and we have Teeth. So those are all 10 of our American alligators here. Now, as you can see, our reptile team is actually doing a training session with them. So every single day around this time, we have all of our zookeepers or all of our reptile team go out onto the beach. So we have one keeper, his name is Grayson. He's going to be the one feeding. That's who you see with a pocket full of different reinforcement. Reinforcement is just a fancy way of saying what they're eating or their diet for the day. So Grayson has a bunch of different things in his pocket. There's a little pouch, and he has different pieces of meat. So chicken, there's some fish in there, as well as a crocodilian biscuit. Now, this has a lot of vitamins and nutrients all baked into a little treat for them. So what we're doing is we're actually calling our animals out of the water. Why would we want to call them out of the water closer to us? Well, so we can get a better look at them. So what Grayson and our reptile keepers are doing right now is they're doing a look over. And that sounds exactly what it is. We are looking all over their body. So we'll start at the front of that snout, and we'll check to make sure that there's no cuts, scrapes, scratches, nothing happened overnight. And if it did, we can take care of it. But we'll check inside their mouths next. Now, alligators can have anywhere between 80 and 90 teeth in their mouth at the same time. Now, you and me, we only have about 32. And the set that we're born with, we keep our whole lives. Alligators are a little bit different. They constantly lose their teeth. So over the course of their lifetime, they could lose anywhere between 2,000 and 3,000 teeth. So as our reptile keepers are working with our animals out on the beach, sometimes we even find some of their alligator teeth that they lose. So checking out their eyes, their face, their mouths, that's step one. But then we call them out of the water further so we can check out the rest of their body. Now, the training that we do here at the zoo with our alligators is a little bit different than the wild alligators you'll see in their natural environment. Now, we're all really lucky here in Florida. There's over 1.3 million American alligators in the state of Florida alone. So there's so many. So if you guys are exploring Florida, you just might see some on those little hikes. So we want to make sure that we're staying a nice distance away from them because as you can see, and as we talked about, they have a whole lot of teeth. And as Eve was kind of explaining earlier, they don't communicate with English like you and I do. They use their mouths to socialize. Do any of you guys give each other high fives or handshakes or even fist bumps? Our alligators can't exactly do that, so they use their mouths to socialize with each other. Now, as you can see, Grayson is still continuing to do lookovers for all of our animals. What we can do next is actually ask them to touch a certain object. So this is called targeting. Did you guys know that alligators are so smart, we can train them? And we can train them to participate in their own health care. So you might see Grayson, he has a long pole. And at the end of that pole, there's a colored disc. And every single alligator has a different color, and they know to only touch their color. So right now, what Grayson's doing is asking one of our individuals out of the water. And as you can see, that's a whole lot of weight. They move really quickly in the water because they have paddles. Just like when we swim, sometimes it's easy to swim when we have our hands cupped like this. But alligators, they have webbed feet, which make them really, really good swimmers in the water. Now, on land, they're a little bit heavier, so they move a little bit slower. However, if they're going top speed and going as quickly as they can go up to 10 to 15 miles an hour. So to compare that, that's like if you were in a car in a parking garage. You have to drive a lot slower, but it's still pretty fast. So that's about as fast as an alligator can run on land. So as you can see, one of our individuals out here on Gator Bay is having a session with Grayson right now, and he is saying, hey, can you come all the way over here and touch this disc? This gives us a good opportunity to get a good look all over them. Now, I did see a question that came in from some of you guys, and that's not when they're awake, but when they're asleep. So as you can see, our alligators are very much awake right now and participating in training. However, when it's time to go to sleep, do they sleep in the water or do they sleep on land? And the answer to that is both. Sometimes it depends on the weather. If it's a little chilly out, they'll probably sleep on land because they're much closer to the sun, and the sun can warm their bodies up so they can take nice warm naps. Now, if the temperature is a little bit warmer and it's hot outside, they might actually rest in the water, but just making sure that they have their nose outside of the water so they're still able to breathe air. But if they want to hold their breath, they have a pretty impressive breath hold. So our breath hold is about 30 seconds to a minute underwater. The alligators, they can hold their breath for about 30 minutes. And if they practice really hard, maybe even closer to an hour. So they have so many different adaptations that are really helpful for them to live here at the Naples Zoo. Now, it looks like we have some more questions coming in. So for Mrs. Ruggiero's class, is there a student named Kai? Kai, do you have a question that you'd like to ask?
Over here, louder. Ask it loud.
How old is that my biggest alligator?
How old can the alligators live until? That's a great question. They can live really old. They can live up to 100 years old. But that's a really long time. So we say anywhere between 80 years and 100 years old. That's a great question. Our oldest here at the Naples Zoo, his name is Big Red, and he's 85 years old, or about. We don't know his exact birthday, but he is about 85 years old. He's one of the oldest residents here at the Naples Zoo. Okay, I'm excited for another question. We have Mrs. Canali and Jack. Jack, hey there. Do you have a question for us?
Get to the zoo.
How did the alligators get to the zoo? That's an awesome question. So our alligators, the 10 that we have here at the Naples Zoo, were actually born at another zoo. They were still born in Florida. They were born on the other part of Florida at a zoo called the St. Augustine Alligator Farm. They have a lot of space and they're really good at having a whole lot of alligators there. So our team, it was about 30 years ago now, and our team went over and carefully moved them so they could live here at the Naples Zoo. But that's a great question. Okay, Miss Mora's class, is there a Claire in there that has a question for us?
Say hi.
Hi.
Hey, go ahead and read your question, sweetie. Go ahead.
The alligators sleep outside the water or inside?
Do they sleep outside of the water or inside of the water? It's not one or the other, it's both. They'll take naps. Our oldest and largest, Big Red, he actually has a special sleeping spot. He likes to sleep on some rocks. Some of our other guys prefer up on the beach, and some of the others actually make themselves a little muddy pool in the water. So it depends on the individual, but both. They will sleep on land and in the water. Okay, next question. We have Miss Heimberger's class, and we have a Kennedy. Kennedy, do you have a question for us?
How fast do alligators run on land?
How fast do alligators run on land? That is a great question. We get asked that one at the zoo every day. So they can run upwards of 15 to 20 miles an hour on land. So a lot of people ask, if you are ever being chased by an alligator, you should run in a zigzag. Actually, you should just run because although they can run fast, it's only for a short amount of time. So, if you can run for a really long time, I have no worries about you guys with these alligators. All right, Miss Edwards' class. I think there's a Mia who might have a question for us today.
All right, what's your question?
How long can an alligator hold its breath?
How long can an alligator hold its breath? They can hold their breath for 30 minutes all the way close to an hour. So they are really cool. They can do a lot of snorkeling on one single breath hold. And we have one more question for today. We have Miss Wambach's class. And Ariana, do you have one last question for us?
Will alligator eat the best?
What do alligators like to eat the best? All right, so if given the choice, they'll probably take any kind of meat. So one of our keepers right now, he's feeding our animals some fish, which is some meat that they like, some chicken that they really like. But our zoo here at Naples is really cool. They have a whole river they can swim in. So although we give them some fish and some chicken, they can completely feed themselves because there's so many natural fish and turtles and smaller reptiles that they can snack on anything they want any part of the day. Sometimes it's even something silly like coconuts. But that is a great question, Ariana. Thank you so much for that. And guys, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know I had some fun, and I know Eve did too, getting to share some of our favorite animals with the zoo with you guys. But I'm going to pass things over to Eve. You guys have an excellent rest of your day, and I think you're about to hear from one more alligator expert.
Thank you, Zookeeper Erin. Yes, now we are going to pass it off to our field expert all the way at Brevard Zoo. So let's give our attention to her on the screen.
My screen show up for you to make sure that you're seeing what things are. Hello, everybody. So my name is Nicole. I am the curator of Herps and Aquatics over at Brevard Zoo. So that means that I am in charge of the teams that take care of all the reptiles and fish over here. I've been doing this for quite a while. There's some pictures there of some different things we've done with gators, both here at the zoo as well as when I went to visit the Everglades too. Got to see some gators there in the wild. I love getting to see gators in their natural habitat. I'm very thankful that I live here in Florida and get to see that. So we're going to talk about some today. I'm going to focus on those senses that you guys were talking about a little bit and heard about in your book, Zach's Alligator. But we do lots of training, just like you got to see with the alligators at Naples Zoo too. So we'll just go ahead and dive into our gators and the senses that they have and what makes them so good at doing the things that they do. So you can move on to the next slide. Thanks. So here at the Brevard Zoo, we do lots to care for our gators. We have 2 American alligators here as well as 2 American crocodiles. But our gators get lots and lots of care through lots of training. I like to say that there's nothing you can do for an animal that size. It's like 200 to 300 pounds if they don't want to do it. So we train them so we can help participate in their own care. So we do things like targeting with those same kinds of targets you got to see at Naples Zoo with alligators there. We do things like training them to come up onto land. They walk onto a scale so we can weigh them. We're doing blood draw training with them as well. So we ask them to come into a chute and they get used to us touching their tails and moving their tails around, pulling closer and getting a needle poked in them so they can get a blood sample. And that way we can check their health without having to do a full appointment with our vets, even though we can do that if we have to. There's a picture of that as well when we have to get a really good look at our gators to do things like x-rays or something like that. Then we are also trained to hold the gators as we need to, which takes an entire team of people. So you always want to work very safely with them because we are very respectful of what they're capable of. They're really big animals and they're really strong. So you always want to be safe. All right, we can move to the next slide. So here is a video of some of the training that we do with them. So like I said, we've got 2 alligators here. We've got Toothless and Martha. Don't let his name fool you. Toothless does have teeth. So the video that you're seeing right now is we're doing a session where we're training them to walk into their own ropes, which is what we're going to use to catch them, to move them if we need to for an exam. So we could throw ropes on them, make it really big, scary, and stressful. But if we actually do need to move them, we would much rather they do it with their choice, something we call voluntarily. So we're teaching them to walk through that lasso. They get a nice snack. And then I'm putting on a jaw rope, which is just going to hold their mouth closed. I'm just getting used to the touch of that on her face. And she gets a snack with that too. And with practice, we can get this to the point where we can tighten all those ropes down. So they're just comfortable with it because it's something they practice all the time. And they get a good snack. So we're moving on to that blood draw training. So this whole time I'm talking to the alligator, I'm telling her about what I'm about to do, that I'm going to move her tail with the hook, I'm going to touch her tail, then apply pressure. There I'm just practicing with my fingernails, because we start with just some broad pressure first before we move on to actual needles. So a little baby step at a time. That's how you help teach these guys and get them comfy. So once they do that, they get a snack. Then we call them back. We can send them back to the water. We also use things like fish and chicken and rats to feed these guys and train, as well as those crock biscuits that they talked about. Looks like the video restarted, so we can move on to the next slide. So they definitely love the water. You guys are usually going to see them in the water unless they're up basking on the land. And that's because they're going to be able to be the most stealthy in the water. They like to be camouflaged and hide from any predators. Even if they're really big, they still want to be sneaky. It's not just hiding from predators, but it also helps them hide from their prey. If their food doesn't see them sneaking up on them, chances are much better that they're going to be able to catch them. Move to the next slide. They are really good swimmers. They use their really big, strong tail to paddle them forward, and they can use their feet to steer. So you can see just how much the water's been churned up as they were chasing that pumpkin. All right, next slide. So here we're going to dive into those senses. So just like most people, they've got their eyes, their nose, their ears. They can see, smell, and hear. So as we click through this, it'll point out all those different things on the alligator. So their eyes are sticking up on top, their nose at the very end of their face, and their ears are that little slit right behind their eye. So the next slide has a closer picture of that, because their ears are kind of hard to see. Oh, just kidding. This is eyes. So their eyes are really good at seeing both daytime and nighttime. So that picture on the right, you can see their eyes are glowing. It's because they've got this ability to reflect all the light. Even if there's not a whole lot, it's just moonlight, they can still reflect it from their eyes and be able to see better at nighttime. So it allows them to hunt a little more at that time. And their eyes are going to be right on top of their head, just above the water surface as they're swimming around. All right, next slide. And if you look really close, you can see they've also got this really cool thing that's acting like a third eyelid. So that's going to cover up their eye and help protect it if they're doing things like eating food up on land. If you click one more time, I believe it'll circle that eye so you can see it. But it's mostly clear, so it also acts like goggles when they're in the water. So they can still see when they're underneath the water, which is pretty cool. Can you imagine just having goggles built into your eyeballs? Makes swimming so much easier. All right, next slide. So there is the nose. So just like they can close up their eyes in a certain way that helps them when they're underwater, they can do the same with their nose. So they will close those nostrils off, which is a picture on the left, when they go underneath, and they can open them up when they're off the surface and want to breathe. And if we're using something like a scent enrichment, so giving them some fun smells to check out and investigate, we'll actually see them opening and closing those noses as they sniff, which is pretty neat. All right, next slide. And I believe, yeah, this was the ear one. So if you zoom really close, you can see that ear slit right behind their eyes. It's also cool they can close their ears when they go underwater too. And that's just a very small slit, so it's nice and protected. But they can hear pretty well. They're actually really good at hearing very low sounds. So something really high pitched, they're not going to hear too well, but the really low sounds they can. And that's important because that's how they communicate with each other. And next slide, please. Yeah. So what would they need to hear? So we talked about how they don't use words to talk to each other, but they definitely use lots of sounds. So we can click ahead. So gators do something called bellowing that they use to talk to each other, and that's going to be making this really, really low rumbly sound. And it's so rumbly, it actually makes the water dance around them, which is what you're seeing in those pictures. So they tilt their head up, put their tail back, and they can literally low rumble, and that's going to carry a long distance. And that's going to be how they declare this is my space. They want to claim a territory. It's how they're going to look for mates. So how they look for boyfriends or girlfriends is going to be listening for those bellows. Next slide. This is one of our gators bellowing. Hear that deep sound and also see the water dance around him. Really fun here on the East Coast is every time we have a rocket launch, it makes a similar low frequency sound. The gators think it's another alligator. So every time we get a rocket launch, gators start bellowing. Both ours here at the zoo as well as ones out in their natural range, like the wetlands and things. So they, besides each other as adults they also need to hear baby alligators. Baby alligators use this cute little chirping sound to talk to mom. Mom takes care of them for at least a year, which is really cool. There's not a lot of reptiles that take care of their young. Usually they hatch and they're ready to go all on their own right away. But gators stay with mom for a while and they use those little chirps to talk to her, which is really neat. It's also really good if you're out in the wetlands and you hear chirping baby alligators, you know there's a mama alligator somewhere. And you want to keep your eyes peeled and make sure you give her lots of space. All right, next slide. So some of their capabilities or adaptations they have up on land is the ability to walk and run on land, like we talked about a little bit. So they do something called a high step, which is where they stretch out those legs and lift that belly way up off the ground. Be able to walk around a bit. They can also run at that point. You can see in the picture of their feet, they've got some webbing that's going to help them use those feet as paddles to steer when they're swimming around. And they can sprawl out and just spend some time basking on the shore as well. They love to sunbathe. That's going to help them to keep their body temperature warmer. You might even see them do that with their mouth open, which is going to let extra heat out and just help cool off a little bit. Okay, next slide. Here's some more pictures of alligators basking. So they just pull up and rest for a long time. This might be when you see them take those naps on land. If they're really comfy and feel safe like that picture on the right, they'll even sploot their feet out from underneath them and just get real comfy laying in the mud. So they could be awake, they could be sleeping, either one, whatever they feel like doing that day. Okay, next slide, please. So they've also got those really big jaws. So they talked about how they explore their world with their teeth. It's like if any of you have any younger siblings, they put everything in their mouths. Gators are the same way. They've got lots and lots of teeth, good for catching their food as well as just exploring everything and communicating with each other a little bit. You'll see them kind of hit jaws next to each other back and forth if they want to argue about something sometimes. They can stretch those jaws really wide, which is going to allow them to eat really big things. All right, next slide, please. So this is a picture of them stretching up, opening that mouth, doing some open mouth training, which allows us to look into their mouth and check all their teeth. You saw some of that at Alligator Bay too. All right, next slide, please. Got another video of some training with them. Okay, so this video is going to show them eating a big piece of food. So while we do a lot of training with smaller pieces that help us stretch things out a little bit, it's also really good and healthy for them to eat some bigger meals. So we're going to toss it to her. It's going to touch the side of her face. They've got sensory cells all on the side of their jaws so they can feel when food is next to them. They can grab it and move it around. Gators don't really chew like you and I do, but they will bite up and down to move food around in their mouth and make sure they have it lined up where they want it to be. Then usually with a big piece of food, they're going to take it back out onto the water because they feel a little safer in the water. Martha definitely doesn't want to share with Toothless, but he doesn't want to share either. They get along really well otherwise, but they don't like to share their food. So you can see her chomping a little bit, lining things up. And then turning it so it's the right direction for her to swallow down whole. So the food they get here is big, but small enough for them to swallow in one big gulp. If they're eating something even bigger, that's when they're going to be like doing things like biting really hard, twisting their bodies, rolling around, and ripping off chunks that they can swallow. He didn't feel the need to go back to the water. He said, I got this right here, guys. But part of all that rolling and tearing is going to be how they lose some of those teeth and how they would end up going through thousands of them in a lifetime. That's why they have that ability, because it'd be a lot harder to catch food if you didn't have teeth. But the way they catch their food, because they can't use their hands to use a fork and a knife and bite off nice little pieces, they have to use their teeth to rip instead. And that just takes a toll sometimes. Yeah, so how can you observe wild alligators? Going to zoos is really awesome and a great way to get up close and see them safely, but it's also really neat to see animals in their native home. So ways that you can safely go see wild alligators: you can go take a hike with your family, visit some wetlands, borrow a boat and take a boat tour. You guys are over near the Everglades, which is really awesome. That's such an incredible place for alligators to live. There's lots of waterways and lots of good plants to hide, plus food for them. You always want to make sure that you're letting them find their own food. We'll talk about that too. So you can go to the next slide. So ways that you can help alligators. Never, ever, ever, ever feed an alligator. You've seen lots of zookeepers feeding gators today, and that is because we're doing so safely with gators that are in human care and rely on us to get their food. They might be able to catch some fish and turtles and things in their waters, in their habitats at the zoo, but a lot of their food does come from keepers because that's just how we're taking care of them. But wild alligators are perfectly capable of catching their own food. Never, ever, ever feed them. They're really smart, and if they have food from a person just one time, they learn that people probably have food. So then they start coming up to people, and that's when it gets unsafe. So don't feed them, and always watch them from a distance. They're really big, they're really strong, they can spin quickly, and they can flip their tails pretty far, which are really strong too. So you don't ever want to make them scared that you're getting too close, because they are more scared of you, believe it or not. So respect that, give them their space, and help protect their home, our waterways. So you can ask your parents what they do to take care of your yards outside. Putting things like fertilizer on our lawns eventually washes off to our waterways, and that can have some not so good effects on our waters. Things like plastic, reduce how much you use and how much you have to throw away, because a lot of that ends up outside, unfortunately, and in the water, and that can be dangerous for the animals like alligators. Gators explore with their mouths. We talked about that, and they will tend to put anything they find into their mouth, whether it's food or not, and that includes a lot of plastic trash. So by not throwing things like plastic out inside and taking care of it or recycling it or not even using it to begin with, great ways to help the alligators. Also, go with your family on walks and clean up trash. Anything you take out is really important. It's going to help all the animals, not just the alligators. But also share what you know. You guys learned a whole lot about alligators today. Hopefully you like them and are a little less scared of them, but respect them just as well. So teach your friends, teach your family. Tell them all about the gators and how much they should care because they're really, really cool animals. All right, next slide. So thanks so much for caring. All right, next slide, and we can move on to some questions. I think it was just a cute picture. So we got some questions over at Miss Andrea's class. Oliver, you have a question?
Go ahead, Oliver.
Do alligators and crocodiles live in different water?
That is a great question. Why do alligators and crocodiles live in different kinds of water? And that is because they have slightly different adaptations. An adaptation is something that's special about the animal that makes them really good at living where they do. So crocodiles have a salt gland. So they are able to live in salty water, and any of that water that they maybe drink or swallow when they're eating, they can get rid of the extra salt that their body can't use through some glands on their mouth and their face. Gators don't have that salt gland, so mostly alligators are going to stick with fresh water, which is not salty, because it's a little easier for their bodies to handle. But they will sometimes swim into salt water too. That's a really good question. All right, Miss Parisi's class. Mariah, you have a question?
Go ahead, Mariah.
Do alligators survive in cold water?
Can alligators survive in cold water? Yes, they can, which is really cool. Now, most alligators are going to be living in these southern states like Florida and Texas and Louisiana, where it usually doesn't get too cold, but they can endotherms. They rely on their environment to determine their body temperature. So they can't keep their bodies warm like we do or heat themselves up by shivering or getting goosebumps. So instead, they're going to be looking for things like sunlight to warm up, or they might dive down into deeper waters where the water hasn't changed temperature yet. Or they can do things like stop eating because they're not going to be able to digest their food anyway. They can even slow down their heart rate to about 1 beat per minute, which is crazy slow, and still be alive. That's going to help them be in those colder waters for longer times. There's even been alligators seen poking their heads up out of ice on top of lakes, which is pretty cool. It's not their favorite place to be, but they can still survive it for a little while. Good question. All right, Miss Bloodgood's class. Laura, you have a question?
Many alligators in the world. Here, I'll do it. I'll do it.
We might be having some technical difficulty there. I couldn't hear her, but I know her question is, how many alligators are there in the world? There are estimated over 5 million alligators in the world, which is really cool. Most of those are going to be the American alligator. So there's the ones that live here in the US. But there's also one other species of alligator in the world. That's the Chinese alligator. Unfortunately, there's only about 150 of them, which is nowhere near as many as we have here. So Chinese alligators need a whole lot of help and conservation and protection. And they can hopefully become a success story like our American alligators, because we didn't used to have 5 million either. We've done a lot of work to help bring our alligator population up to those numbers again. So hopefully we can do the same with the Chinese alligator. But American alligators, there's over 5 million. They're doing really good. All right, Mrs. Graham's class. Camilla, you have a question? Give one more chance. Do you have a question, Camilla? Okay, I'm not hearing that either. But she was going to ask, why do they have sharp horny plates on their backs? And that is to help protect them. So those plates are called osteoderms, which means bone skin, which is really cool. There's little pieces of bone that are in their skin and helps act like armor for them. So it helps protect them from predators, but it's also going to help them warm up. So it acts kind of like a solar panel and collects all that sunlight and helps them warm up when they're up basking on the shores. All right, Mrs. Guitard's class. Denise, you have a question?
Ask your question. Ready? Read your question.
How baby alligator hatch?
How do baby alligators?
How do baby alligators hatch? It's a really cool way. So baby alligators are born with this little sharp bit on the end of their nose called an egg tooth. And it only stays there when they're really little because its only purpose is to help them crack the egg from the inside. So they're going to use that little egg tooth to poke a little hole, and then they're going to crawl their little way out of the egg, and then they start chirping. So just like we talked about the sounds that the baby alligators make, they're going to make those sounds, and then mom is going to hear them, and then she'll come and dig out the dirt and let the babies come out of their nest because she lays the eggs in a big mountain of dirt. So she helps dig them out so they don't have to do that themselves. And then she's going to help show them where the water is so they can get to safety. And she stays and protects, which is really neat. So hatching is really cool for baby alligators. All right, Mrs. Hand Up Hangoda's class, Daniel, you have a question?
Is basic from predators.
How do alligators stay safe from predators? That is going to vary depending on how old and big the gator is. So baby alligators are going to rely heavily on their mom to help protect them. They're also going to use camouflage. So they've got lots of spots and stripes to help blend in with the plants. They're going to hide in the water so they aren't seen so much. And as they get a little bit bigger, those osteoderms, those bony plates we talked about, are going to help protect them as well. And as they get bigger and bigger, then they're going to have those big heads and the big teeth, as well as the big powerful tail, and they can use all of that to protect themselves. So they're definitely more at risk from predators when they're really small, and by the time they're fully grown, there's not a whole lot that can eat them. But they still have all those different abilities to help protect them from predators or even each other if they get into an argument. So great question, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much for teaching us all about alligators. We have learned so much about baby alligators, how they come to the zoo, how they are in the wild, and all about their five senses. I want to thank you, Nicole, for joining us. I want to give a big thank you to Naples Zoo for hosting us and helping coordinate this, and to our tech team and communications team for putting it on. My teachers, I have some students that got selected to get their alligator. This will be sent to you in the pony. From veterans, Oliver, you will have an alligator. From Golden Gate, Mariah will have one. Osceola, Camilla. Estates, Mia, and Herbert Cambridge. Ariana, look for your alligators in the pony. They will come and teachers will be labeled to you with their name on it so that way you can remember. Again, thank you all. I hope you had a great Friday. See you later, alligator.